Hi, I'm Steve Rader Ginsburg, and I'm the director of the Ottorino Center for the Arts and Humanities at the University of St. Joseph in West Hartford, Connecticut, which is the original and unceded lands of the Mohegan, Pequot, Scatchitoches, Golden Hill Poquessett, Nipmuc, Lenape, and all the unrecognized Algonquin people of this area. We recognize their ancestors past, present, and future, and recognize their continued contributions to society. This year continues to be an unusually challenging year for the arts, artists, and our ability to gather as a community. But thanks to our program funders, the National Endowment for the Humanities, New England Foundation for the Arts, the Edward C. and Ann T. Edwards Foundation, Roberts Foundation, and those of you who have previously donated to support this free virtual programming. The 2020 and 2021 Ottorino season is our Let's Dance season. It's our effort to help inspire getting up, using your body, and staying healthy, happy, and dancing. Tonight, through our Artist in Residence program, we are hosting the 5th of 7 virtual programming engagements with Music from the Soul. Our virtual program tonight is Tap as Music. Music from the Soul will discuss the creative process of composing tap dance, blending the choreographic and musical composition process. Also includes the discussion of specificities for writing music with and for tap dancers compared to other works. Music from the Soul is a tap dance and live music company that blurs the line between concert dance and music performance. It celebrates tap's roots in the African diaspora. A co-director who is with us tonight is Leonardo Sandoval, who's a Brazilian tap dancer. Leonardo has established a reputation in the tap world and beyond for his musicality and for adding his own Brazilian flavor to tap. An artist in residence at the National Dance Institute and the American Tap Dance Foundation, and a core member of Dorrance Dance. Leonardo is in demand as a choreographer, dancer, jazz musician, and educator touring across the United States and abroad. Also, co-director Greg Richardson is with us. Born to a family of musicians where everyone was expected to play and sing, Gregory Richardson is a composer and multi-instrumentalist, the co-artistic director of Music from the Soul. He is also the co-musical director of Dorrance Dance. And hosting tonight is our community fellow and tap dancer, Claire O'Donnell. OD is a choreographer, performer, and educator who dedicates herself to the American tap dance tradition. She takes great pride in preserving, teaching, and studying the history of tap dance as an indigenous and vital art form. Currently, she's the artistic director of OD and Tap, a tap dance company founded in 1998 to answer the needs of her dance students throughout the area. The company is a diverse group of dancers who appreciate and respond to the traditional and improvisational elements of the form. Thanks for being with us, and please, everyone, I'll see you later in this talk, and let's get on with our talk. Tap dance as music.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, thanks, Steve.
Good evening. This is a real treat to have two such talented young men in the house.
Oh, thank you, Claire.
There's just so much to talk about. There's some questions that the students may have. There's some questions that you may have about the process and how to explain it. The first question is, what is unique about tap dance that will lend itself towards music?
What is unique about tap dance and other percussive dance forms? Leo, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I can take that one. But I would like you to also give some insight on that too, right?
Yeah, sure.
For sure, for me, it's the quality of being a dancer and a musician in the same place. Like you literally are both things, and you cannot separate those things. That's why I really got drawn into this art form, specifically to tap dance. I was brought into the art form because my ballet teachers thought that I had a musical ear, like art, that I had a lot of musicality. And even before understanding myself as a musician, I already knew that I was making music with the dance. So for me, is that special point that you are, this duality is the greatest place for me.
For me, Claire, I think as a musician, it's the accessibility of tap and other percussive dance forms where, you know, I don't have a lot of background in dance myself, like dance classes or not much exposure to dance as a young person. But I am able to go into a rehearsal room with, you know, very high level tap dancers and feel at home and communicate, and we can just get down to business and start talking and making music, and we're speaking the same language. So I can like really get right into their process right away. Whereas, you know, if someone asked me to make something or work with a ballet company, there would be a really big learning gap for me. And I probably just would feel there'd be some mental blocks, like both fake and real, that would kind of inhibit me from just like jumping in. But tap is just like, you know, it's just like being in the room with a bunch of musicians. So I can really get into it and start learning about it and working with them.
So the language that you speak is universal between tap and music, which would be the language of music.
Yeah, and music and rhythm.
And what's your preference?
Between what?
No, it's a joke.
Oh, between music or
There's
rhythm?
music and rhythm, and they. So, can you talk about what makes a good collaboration and why you choose to collaborate?
Yeah, what makes a good collaboration? I think a good collaboration takes a lot of the same skills that anybody needs in their workplace, which is obviously communication is so crucial. A lot of times you're having a disagreement and you're not really even disagreeing about what you think you are. You just don't understand what each other are saying. And I think a big part for me in my kind of coming of age in collaborating with not just Music from the Soul, but also with Dorrance Dance, was learning to not always have all of your favorite ideas, that they don't always make it into the final thing. Maybe they just don't fit into the overall arc of the show, or maybe they do, but you're not necessarily in charge, you know? So definitely coming with ideas and being willing to kind of let them go, I think is a big part of collaboration, no matter how genius you think your idea is. And obviously the flip side of that is, you know, letting other people have their thing that they're really passionate about, but you don't quite see it yet, or you don't hear it yet, but you just kind of got to go with it because you are just going to give them that respect as your collaborator, but B, as you get to work with people longer and longer, like the case with Leo, you just start to trust them, and you're like, all right, I'm not seeing it, but that doesn't mean that it's not good. I guess you need some time to just run with it before you have to try and defend it, you know, something like that.
Yeah,
What do you think, Leo?
I guess trusting is a good point, because it's a vision of somebody else's too that you are trying to put together with yours, and you gotta trust that those things will work and like find ways to make it work. So trust, I think, is a extremely important thing in a collaboration, not just in the person that you are working with, but also in yourself. If you're really sure of something, or you're like really have an opinion and want that thing to come across, you have to push it for it too as well. And I think that one thing that helped Greg and I to work together a lot it's that we created our own language independent of tap dance and music. We have our language together, and that works well because we know each other for so long. Like with being, I mean, I know Greg as long as I live in New York, basically. So he's a part of my life, my American life, pretty much from the beginning. And we know each other in different scenarios. Like we perform it on the streets, we perform with Dorrance Dance, we really convive together. So that helps a lot. Like find a language and really trust in your partner and in yourself too as well.
Yeah, and you know what you're saying about like trusting yourself when you really feel strong about an idea, and you have to like maybe not let it go or just be like, no, I got to do it. And then I feel like there's even another level of trust past that, where it's like, I don't even feel that strong about this idea, but I still want to see where it goes. And now I have to push it in front of you and 5 dancers and the whole band, even though, you know what I mean? Like, it's like really vulnerable. Like, I'm not even saying like it's the best idea ever, but I still want to follow it through, you know?
Yeah, it's a place of vulnerability, but it's very interesting.
What about you, Claire? What's your experience of collaborating as a dancer with musicians?
Well, as a dancer, sometimes it clicks, sometimes it doesn't. And the trust, I think, sharing, willing to give up your grit or stubbornness about it because that's in your mind, and being able to experiment with the idea that's been put out there. So I think it's trial and error. And I think when both collaborators see the direction, that's a moment. And you say, oh, that's working, that's going to happen. Then we need to go where? And then you find your way there. It's a bit of a puzzle, and it's a little bit of a mystery. And it's fascinating. Fascinating. Especially when something clicks and it comes out and you say, wow, how did we do that?
Yeah, totally. And I also have the experience over and over that I keep trying to have faith every time, that like every time we finish, not just with Leo, but with like most projects, no matter what the level of stress is, when you finish, you always go, oh, it's great. Like, it's great. It never totally flops. Like, it never doesn't work as long as you put in the effort and you follow it through. So just trying to like constantly remind yourself in that process that like, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. Like, you don't have to, you can get worked up and give it 110% energy, but you don't have to lose it. Like, you don't have to stress, because it's going to be good, you know?
Talking about things that, that are coming out good. I was wondering maybe if we can. Go ahead, Claire, sorry.
No, I was thinking from a student's perspective, what tools might you give them to start in that process?
For a dancer, try to figure out a couple music terminologies. You know, you have to have a bag of terminologies and understand music in a minimal level to at least start a conversation. You know, because you need to understand what bar is, what a compass and measure. So try to figure out a little bit of this terminology, but it's not so complicated. Like if you are a percussive dancer, you have that in your pocket, maybe in a different vocabulary. And musicians are very specific. Not all of them. Greg is pretty easy about that, but there are some musicians that are very specifically about the way that you talk to them and like the way that you express an idea. and that will help their job too as well. So I think like for the first is it's trying to understand a little bit of the vocabulary. You don't have, and again, you don't have to play an instrument to understand that. It's just you already play your body and your feet. It's just like finding the way that they are calling some things that we are calling maybe in different ways.
And I would say if I was going to give some advice to a tap dancer as a musician, which I never do, but I would say, you know, like tap is such a soloistic art form that they're learning solos and melodies constantly, probably their whole life. So I would say, don't be afraid to take some time to learn some patterns and sit on them for like 5 minutes, like just the way that a drummer would. You know what I mean? Like if you are a drummer, you know, you put on your favorite song and you just play along to it for like over and over. And maybe there's a couple fills and there's probably not a solo, but you know, maybe if it's like a jazz tune, there's a solo. But you're going to spend the majority of your time just keeping the groove. And I think that could easily get looked over for like a young tap dancer, where they just want to get right into the circle, or they just want to get right in thing and like solo, 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 and like shed and show you how fast I can go. But they're like, have spent no time just like sitting back and like holding, just like you should have the patience to sit back and hold the groove for 3 minutes, because that's what the rest of the band is doing. That's what every other musician is doing. So like you should be able to do that and find the fun in it, and find it's not just like a punishment, or it's like, no, you have to sit there and be quiet. It's like do what the rest of the band is doing and find the depth in that, because I think that's got to be helpful.
Movements, drills, sitting into something so you understand it. As advice to younger students, I mean, just to simplify it, we understand that it's far more complex than that. But for students, I mean, you can get lost in a rudiment. You can get lost in a drum pattern or a rhythm. So you need to sit in it for a minute. Like you said, you need to experience it. I think probably for longer than 3 minutes, but yes, I think that's really good advice.
And like we were talking about the other day, Claire, about like making sure that they know the form, you know, of the piece, you know, so they can identify all the pieces. And so I know, Leo, you were trying to segue us into hearing a piece. So why don't we get ready to listen to Samba do Sol, because it's actually in an AABA form, which is like a classic jazz form. So you just makes basically, it sounds like what it is. There's two parts. There's an A and a B. You hear the A twice, the B takes you somewhere different, and the A brings it home, and then it goes into solo. So what you'll hear in this piece, Samba do Sol, is an intro with Leo doing body percussion, which came out sounding really nice because we got the mic super close, like up on his chest, so you can really hear the bass of him hitting his chest, snaps, claps, and then it will go into the form of the tune. It's mostly sax. I've edited this clip a little bit, so it's a lot shorter, and I've cut out some of the solos, including my guitar solo, which was a painful decision, but I did it. So it's going to go right from the saxophone, Jose Cruzata playing the form, into him going into a solo, and then it goes right from there into some trades. So if you keep your ears open, you'll hear it. I believe it goes basses first, which is Jennifer Vincent. She takes like 8 measures. Then it goes to Leo, tap, back to the bass, trade to Leo, back to the bass, and then kind of like take us home from there, which it'll fade out. So it's not the whole song, but let's check it out.
Hey, all right. Well, that was great. I'm just letting you know I'm going to be joining in on the conversation. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty with Claire's connection. So when we can, we're going to bring Claire back in as much as possible. She's got such great expertise. We're super glad to have her here. But I wanted to just say, first, that was a wonderful clip. Good thing my camera wasn't on for most people seeing me dance during it. But that was a beautiful collaboration. And we heard tap solo, we heard that integration. Can you tell us about how you collaborated and the creative process of bringing tap and the musicians together?
Yeah, totally. Well, first, let me say thank you to Lincoln Center Education, because they were really one of the first bigger organizations to give us some residency time and some performance space. And as soon as we got the budget, I immediately carved out, I was like, we're holding this aside. We're putting aside part of the budget. We're going to the studio. And it didn't have anything to do with the performance or anything, but I was just determined that that's what I really wanted to do. And Leo was totally down with it. So that's how we were able to fund that. And yeah, by the way, that all of that is up on Spotify or iTunes or YouTube or wherever you listen to music. Yeah, so that tune actually is interesting because Leo wrote that melody. So, and I don't remember if he wrote, if it was with your voice, or did you on piano or something, or maybe I think you did it with your voice and then you kept singing it, and then Noe, our pianist, put it on piano, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And then so I made the chords around it, which was really fun for me because I'd never done that before. And then when we finally put it in the live setting, it was one of the tunes where we really wanted to visually keep reminding the audience that the dancers are part of the band, that they're not just dancing over the music. So what we did in that trade section with the bassist, Jennifer Vincent, playing amazingly. In the live show, it's not just, with the recording you just heard, it's Jennifer, Leo, but in the live show, it's Jennifer, Leo, Jennifer, a different dancer, Jennifer, and then a third dancer. So each dancer is getting their turn. And while each dancer was soloing, we had the other dancers come back and actually stand at the back of the stage, like with the band. So like if there was like a little bit of space in between the drummer and the bassist, one of the dancers would go stand there and just keep time, just exactly what we were talking about, Claire, about just like, you know, like you're not soloing, you're not in the spotlight, but you're playing and you're just holding that pattern because it's important. You're a percussionist. So yeah, I always am happy with that song. And I also like that it has not just the tap solo, but the body percussion intro. And on the full version, there's a body percussion outro, which really, what I like about it is that nothing sounds superfluous. Nothing sounds like, oh, you had a song and then you put body percussion on top of it. Like if you take out the body percussion, it doesn't sound as good. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it needs the body percussion, which is really, I think, what a big goal for both of us. You know, did you want to say anything, Leo?
Yeah. Yeah, I really love that track and like how it came together. And one only thing that I would add is like that because it's a different media from when we played that on the stage, we changed a couple things in the dance section to go to the album, and that goes for pretty much every single song that we are releasing as an audio track, because we really want to make a point to that media that the taps over there are an instrument, and it doesn't really sound cool to have like the whole choreography tap over the whole song, when like Greg was really smart finding ways of really featuring the tap without looking boring and like with actually making part of the music. So the song really has a personality, and those personalities are different sometimes from the stage and like from the audio track, but the essence is the same.
Right, because if we had recorded it as it was in the show, you would have heard taps throughout the whole piece, which works on stage, you know. And even that's something that we kind of like keep playing with too, is to like being like, we're a dance company, but do we have to have taps over at every point? We don't, you know what I mean? And so we have some songs where like Leos and Leathers, you know what I mean? It's like a softer. And then I feel like even some pieces have been almost like not even percussive at all, like Meo Hermao, and you know, it's like pretty quiet for parts of it anyways.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have a full-length album of these songs. Was this the first track that you collaborated on?
We have a full album. We have the whole show recorded in the studio. It takes a lot of work just to put out each piece and not have it sound kind of like slapdash. So our theory was that if we put it all out at once, even our biggest fans are probably going to listen to the first couple tracks, and like I don't think people have that much of a attention span for music right now. So we thought it was better to just release one track at a time, and that way once every couple of months is like, hey guys, new tracks out, and then people are kind of listening to it. Whereas, you know, even my best friends that are in bands, like if they gave me a whole album, I would probably listen to it once, but I might not. It's just hard to find the time to listen to a whole album back to back several times, because really that's what it deserves. You know, if someone puts that much work into it, there's so many nuances. You can't just listen to it once. But you know, when something comes on the radio, because the radio's like pushing it on you, you end up hearing it like a billion times, you know. But then when something takes a little bit more mental energy to digest, you might maybe just hear it once or something. So
well, I think, you know, let's see. I think, Leo, you gave us some clips that showed how examples of taking music and integrating on stage. So I feel like one of the things we just saw was taking what was on the stage and bringing it into the music studio. So could you set us up a video clip and tell us about the reverse?
Sure. Like one of the biggest influences for our music and for our dance is Brazilian music, and specifically this time of music, this era and genre of music from Brazil that called Tropicalia. It's like music's from the 60s and the 70s in Brazil, and I love that type of music, and I listen to all the time, and it's where I take all my inspirations and influences. Like there's this one specific song that I will play it. We will listen just now. That there's this drum section. It's not one drum, like a drum group section playing this groove throughout the whole song that I loved so much that I took it, borrowed that groove that they had over there, and translated to the dance, just to the tap dance, and like just to the dancers to do something, to play that sound that is in the song, but with our percussive sound. And like what I think is super interesting about that is like when Greg listens to my translation of that, he can create a completely different song on top of the thing that I stole from somebody else. Yeah, you will see right now just the example of the song that I listened to, and then where we use the taps into the choreography. So first, the song called Onde o Rio é Mais Baiano. Free translation is where Rio is more Bahia. And it's played by Caetano Veloso. And what I want you to pay attention in that song is the drum line over there. Kevin, is the video that I sent, the song called Onde o Rio é Mais Baiano. I can't remember. It's the first video that you tagged us earlier.
A Bahia, estação primeira do Brasil. Ao ver a mangueira, nela inteira se viu. Exibiu-se sua face verdadeira. Que alegria não ter sido em vão que ela expeliu as seatas pra trazerem o samba pro Rio, pois o mito surgiu dessa maneira E agora estamos aqui, do outro lado do espelho, com o coração na mão, pensando em jamelão no Rio Vermelho. Todo ano, na festa de Iemanjá, presente no 2 de fevereiro. Nós aqui e ele lá, isso é confirmação de que a Mangueira é onde o rio é mais baiano, onde o rio é mais baiano, onde o rio é mais baiano, onde o rio é mais. A Bahia, estação primeira do Brasil. Ao ver a mangueira.
Yeah. We got a little free treat to Bahia just now with those images.
Yeah.
So now you will see what I did with the choreography and like what I took out of that song, like that. Karakat, kaka, karakat, kaka, ah. So now you see that with tap dancers doing that rhythm on the stage. So here we go.
So nice.
Thank you.
You know what I love about that, Steve and Claire, is that he never played me that Caetano Veloso track until like years after we had made that piece. So it was like an inside joke that even I didn't know. And he was like, I think we were just hanging out one night. He's like, you want to hear where I got that beat from? And I was like, what? And it's such a beautiful song. So I almost feel like next time we do this, we should show the tap video first, and then the other video, because that was my experience.
Right.
And I also like watching that clip reminds me that it's not just like, you know, Leo's always saying like there's no such thing as Brazilian tap dance, but it reminds me that it's not just Leo's choreography. It's also that, like, you know, a lot of the dancers are actually from Brazil, so the way that they execute it is like super you know, like you can't imitate it. Like it's not, you know, it's like it's really deep in their body. So like in that clip you see Ana Tomayashi and Lucas Santana, and also Gisele Silva is one of our dancers. So it's not just, Leo's not the only Brazilian dancer, and it's not just the choreography, it's also the dancers that are doing it, which makes it special.
Yeah. So Leo, when you shared the original track with Greg, like, what was that experience? Did you see his mind get blown right there in the moment?
Yeah, I did. And we were listening to that track, I think, for the next 2 weeks nonstop, like many versions of it. I love the song, and I was super happy that he got so into it too. And it was while we were in a creative process. So it was very nice. It was a nice exchange.
Let's try to bring Claire's voice back into this. And see if, I don't know if you're hearing us well, Claire. We were having a lot of difficulty with you, but if you have a thought, a question you want to bring up into the conversation, let's try that.
Was a beautiful, you explained it completely, how it was laid out, that I understood. And that's the ultimate of what every dancer and musician want to understand, speaking the same language. I love this it was the visual and then the rhythm coming through on the second piece. It's very clear. It's your choices are really beautiful. You're making some wonderful choices, and I love that first piece, though. I tell you, I wish I heard your solo, your guitar solo.
Yeah, go to Spotify and check it out, because I was actually really happy with that guitar solo too. And speaking of stealing, I actually stole from from a Gershwin tune for that solo. One of his preludes that I just had always really liked, and I just thought, if I take a couple bars, nobody will really notice. And if they do, it's not stealing, it's an homage. So yeah, listen to it when you get a chance.
Thank you for the nice words, Claire, too.
I will.
And Claire, I'm going to press ahead with some of our...
What's that?
Claire, I'm going to press ahead with some of our questions. It's still really hard to hear you, but just give us a way we know to bring you back in.
Yeah, or put your question in the comment, Claire, or anything you want.
You can also write in the comment, and I can be your voice. So I wanted to ask you guys, really about this idea of a band, because it's like you're a band and you're a music and you're a dance company. So as a band, like, how do you have the vocabulary, and is some of that dance vocabulary coming in there? Do you speak to each other in rhythms? If you could talk about the two cultures of dance and musicians coming together within Music of the Soul, I'd love to hear about how that plays out in your company.
Yeah, there's a lot of shared vocabulary. A lot of our dancers are pretty experienced, so they've been working with bands. You know what I mean? I think maybe like younger dancers are coming out of studios a lot, and so they're probably working with like a CD player, MP3 player. Correct me if I'm wrong, Leo. And then like the lucky ones get a chance to kind of like play with a real band, and then the professional ones are playing with live musicians more often. So yeah, they're pretty comfortable being in the studio. It's hard to find space for us to work in the same place. Most band rooms, like a rented band room in the city, won't have a wood floor, and if they did, there's no way they want you tap dancing on it. And most dance studios also don't want you dancing on their floor, but on the chance that the dance studio will let you dance on their floor, they don't want a band in there.
Yeah.
If they will let a band come in, then that means us bringing in like the drum set and the instruments and the amps and the PA and all the stuff that they're just like not going to have there.
Right.
There is a lot of logistical challenge with having this type of unique blended like tap, like percussive dance and live band setup, but it's well worth it. What do you think, Dorrance?
I think sometimes it brings very creative ways of rehearsing, actually. One specific that I love to remember is that we were in this residency in upstate New York at Cats Band, this institution over here. And we were creating new music, and it was very complex. It was a music that was in 7. Greg has the t-shirt. It was that music that was in 7, that was transitioning between a 7 measure to a 4th measure. And we were going back and forth. There were a couple solos in the middle, and it was very complex. And at one dinner in the evening, we were all rehearsing without our dancers, without their shoes, and musicians without their instruments. We were literally just singing along the whole song, each person singing their own part. And anyone who got inside of that room at that moment would think that we were like really crazy and very dramatic, but it was very special to see that we were like communicating, doing the things that we do, like talking about our job in a completely outside of the rehearsal room, and like really understanding each other. Was a bit confused because, we had a couple of beers in between that rehearsal dinner, but it was interesting. It was really nice. It was a nice experience. Yeah. And go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to say, to clarify, like when he's saying part of it was in 7 and part of it was in 11, if that isn't what he's saying is that like most music is the beats are in groups of 4, you know, or 2 or 3 if it's like a waltz, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But usually it's 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like 99% of everything you hear on the radio. But this piece was a little challenging for us because it was a group of 7, and then it was a group of 11, and then it would keep repeating that like 7, 11. So it wasn't intuitive for us. And then in terms of everybody like singing the song at the dinner table, that's actually something that the musicians learned from the dancers, because the tap dancers all the time are like what you'd call like scatting. So like, say one dancer has a question for Leo, and maybe they don't even dance it. They just go, oh, you know that part where we go like a-da-da, a-da-da, a-dee-da, a-da, and Leo will be like, oh yeah, it finishes like this, and they'll just do it verbally. They do it all the time. The musicians, we don't really do that because we're holding our instruments. We just like, oh, you know the part that goes like this. So where they could maybe have that conversation at the dinner table, it was kind of us joining in too and like kind of learning that from them.
Nice. So yeah, I mean, that's interesting. You know, the scat tradition, tap dancing. I mean, you've played some videos in some of our prior conversations of like big bands, you know, kind of like the Duke Ellington Orchestra and tap dancers. So what you've shown me is, and shown our audiences, is that there is a tradition of this live music with tap dancers. So do you think, like, I'm really curious about, does tap dance lend itself more easily, or is there some sort of attraction towards playing with live musicians? Or are you really, is this unique?
I think we can't run away from tap dancers can't run away from live music, because we are musicians. Like, the art form was born to the idea that we were musicians. Like, it wasn't on a concert stage. It's not how it was brought up. Like, tap dancers got famous by touring with bands. So it's really tight. It's how the art form actually developed it and got thrown out in the entire world. So yeah, I would say that it wasn't a choice. It was what it was, you know. It didn't have any other way to go. It had to be with a live band.
Isn't it interesting to think though also that like ballet for hundreds of years would always have had to been with a live orchestra to, like, you know, like for most of that history, they would have had to have been with a live group too, which is very different, but an interesting parallel, you know.
Pretty much anything before electricity, yeah.
Yeah.
To have live accompaniment.
I would love to see like a modern dance company with a live band, you know, or something like that. Like that would be totally exciting for me.
Yeah.
Or any type of dance on a band stage, you know, like you have a band, anytime there's a band and they have dancers with, if you're at, say, like Le Poisson Rouge, or you're like at a band venue, you know what I mean? It always takes the performance up a notch, you know what I mean? And that's not just jazz. Like if you look at like James Brown or any of these famous like R&B bands in American history, like either they had dancers or they were dancing themselves as well, you know what I mean? Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so many, just brings me right to like, you know, really coordinated backup dancers. Like I'm just thinking of, you know, even like Jurassic 5, you know, had some really great dance routines from that sort of live hip hop element. But let's talk, Greg, about your music director at Dorrance Dance, your co-artistic director of Music from the Soul. You've definitely found a niche, you know, with working as a musician with tap dancers. So how did you get into that groove? Were you attracted? Did something pull you? Were you familiar with tap before you entered the space?
No, I wasn't. I like I said before, I never took any dance classes as a kid. And I didn't have any kind of really relationship to it. But Michelle Dorrance, who is the artistic director of Dorrance Dance, I played in a band with her for like a couple years. We were like on tour, and she wasn't dancing, she was playing bass. And she was always kind of like lamenting that she wasn't practicing. I really should be practicing tap. I should be tapping. We would stop in like Cleveland, Ohio, and she would run into a Home Depot and get a piece of wood and like buy a piece of wood and throw it in the van, and then, you know, she would have it at the next venue, and everyone else is eating dinner and she's practicing. But she was super modest about it. I never really realized that she was actually like a world-class dancer. She never said, "Oh, I'm famous." I mean, we were friends, like close. You know what I mean? I guess part of it that this is like the time before maybe it would have been second nature to just Google somebody or whatever, like, or, you know, all of her business wasn't on social media. But then when we got back to the city and that band kind of like, we stopped playing with it, she did her first show as a tap dance, you know, as a choreographer at St. Mark's Church in the Bowery. And that show is called Sound Space. And she invited me to write some music on bass for it. So that was like my first introduction to that. And it was hard at first. It's just unlike anything else. It's not like playing with a band. It's not like you're just playing a new type of music. It's like the fact that there's like 15 dancers and they might be doing different things, and that they're not sitting there looking at you. They're like 30 feet away on stage facing away from you. Is, you know, it's like playing with a percussion ensemble, you know, like maybe like a drum line or in a parade or something where there's like 20 drummers, you know, they're all doing something different, and you're just trying to like, it's a really different sensation of trying to lock in with that, and perhaps even having them lean on you to be the foundation sometimes, like, you know, especially bass. They're like, you know, we're listening to you. You can't just listen to us. You have to like sometimes push forward and even ignore what they're doing sometimes. But that's not an ideal situation, you know, for musicians. You don't want to. That's maybe something you do in a pinch, but that's not the way you really want to operate. So.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, I think binaries are kind of like, you know, odd constructions, and I don't necessarily want to put something in a binary, but tell me if it resonates or you just don't see this at all, Leo. If we think of dancers as a tap dancer as a musician or a dancer or somewhere along the lines of a spectrum, or do you think it's personal for every different tap dancer?
I would say it's probably the level of it. Like if you are one or the other, it's probably personal, like how much you are a dancer or how much you're a musician. But you are definitely both things. You cannot be a tap dancer and not have some inclination to music. You have to know how to keep a beat and like to be part of a music, because you are making sound, and your sound is feeling the song or the music that somebody else is playing or recording. So the duality, I think it's present in every tap dancer. Probably some of them are more inclinated to the dance side, and some of them more inclinated even to the music side too as well. I try as much as I can and as much as I see possible to blur the line and be both of them at the same time, and like transition between both sides all the time and everywhere in way I can.
I'm curious, Claire, if what your thoughts are, and like, do you feel like, do you also feel that some dancers are more musician than dancer, and some dancers are more dancer than musician, or what's your experience? Oh, you're muted. You're muted, Claire.
Okay. Merce Cunningham was a collaborator with John Cage, Modern Dancers. So that's quite a unique relationship that they had. His music was very avant-garde. That's just to answer your wanting to see a modern company. But yes, there are dancers that are more musician than, and your observation about ballet, and ballet kind of floats over the musicality, whereas tap dance is precise. It's more precise in its execution and delivery. And Greg, what you said about being in a tap line, and sometimes you just got to hold your own. You got to hold your own, regardless of what's going on around you. And that's when that cacophony of symphony becomes one.
I didn't know that about Merce Cunningham. Like I said, I don't have a very strong dance background, so I'm definitely going to check that out.
Realize, but John Cage's music was very avant-garde, and if you listen to some of it, and you see Merce's dancing, you'll understand the connection. But it's all about collaboration too. So that's a something that is the topic and the beauty of tap dance with music.
So, I've been in a number of rehearsals or shows where everything just turns into like such a train wreck. And you guys have, it's like polyrhythmic. You have feet moving and instruments going. So can you talk to us about a rehearsal process in which like you have to just sort out and figure out all of these rhythms that are happening? Or do you sync up more? Is it more about just syncing up and you got it?
I mean, there's a lot we could say about that. I'll say one thing while Leo thinks is that one thing that I've realized helps a lot lately. We had a residency at was it called All Arts? Leo, was it All Arts?
Just now?
Yeah.
Downtown art.
It'll come to us. Anyways, we had a residency last week, and because of COVID regulations, we could only have so many people in the room, so we couldn't do the full band and the dancers. We only had space for a handful of dancers, and it was on the 4th floor, and it was one of those situations where they don't want a band, and we weren't going to be carrying drums up there or anything. So I was able. At first, I thought it was boring. I was like, God, it's going to sit there. So basically, Leo working with 4 dancers, and me just kind of like twiddling my thumbs. But I realized that me, and this seems obvious to me now, like me having a complete understanding of what the dancers are doing, so that say when they start scatting, they're like, oh, I messed up at that D-dot, the D-dot, the D-dot. I'm like, oh yeah, I know where you are. You know what I mean? And it really helped me get more inside the choreography, so that, you're talking about train wrecks and getting lost. When that happens, it's really important that at least someone in the band knows where the dancers are, or vice versa, that one of the dancers knows where the band is. And usually it's the latter. Like, everybody kind of knows the song. So if the dancers mess up, they're like, oh, they're getting to the chorus. But it's kind of not as usual for the band to be like, oh, they're just at the D-dot, the D-dot, the D-dot, like they're, like, let's move and catch them. So one thing that me and Leo have done a lot is me watching dance rehearsals, and Leo even more. Anytime there's a band rehearsal and there's no dancers coming, he's just there. He's there like watching, and we can like ask him questions, and he's like participating in the band rehearsal. Leo, do you want anything?
Yeah, there is definitely like different levels and times of creation, and obviously rehearsing. Like what I found lately that it's very useful is just to have smaller rehearsals with the band, and like maybe just 1 or 2 dancers to actually find out what we are trying to do with everyone, and then have a separate rehearsal to teach the dancers what we were talking about with the musicians, and then to put everybody together in the room and figure it out what will happen. The place that we were having a residency just now, it's Arts on Site here in New York. And it was a residency that we got from this place called The Yard, Dance The Yard in Martha's Vineyard, who is helping us to develop our next performance that it's coming sometime. And that was very interesting because first, before we had that kind of dance residency where Greg was just sitting by himself, like he was the only musician in the room, before we had that other residency that were more musicians in the room than dancers, and it's really phases, and we have to have those phases to at some point put everybody together.
Yeah, it's expensive to have everyone at the same time, and it's also it's time consuming, like it's a lot. It can be, speaking of cacophony, like you know, if you try and split up the room and you're like, all right, dancers work on this for 2 seconds and the band will work on this for 2 seconds, like it's slowly you're like going crazy and you're like, you know, it's like your mind is splitting in two.
Yeah. Claire, let's try to bring you back in with any thoughts on this and any questions you want to bring into the space as we are nearing the end.
Well, I don't know. I think this is a real gem, and it's a real disappointment that it's not live. And you have two of the most premier people in Connecticut. You know, it's a gift. It's really nice, and I want to thank St. Joseph's and Greg and Leo. And I've seen Leo before, and I've been at Michelle's performances. I just think you're on the mark. I mean, in terms of your discussion of composition, your discussion of how to lay out a tune, I think that's something that every student needs to strive for, to understand. So I'm sorry with the technical difficulties. But
we'll try and make it live at some point, so you can definitely come.
Yeah, thank you, Claire.
Are you gonna
don't worry about the technique.
Are you going to be at the Pillow this year?
Yeah, we're taking the company. Leo and I are taking the company to the Pillow on April 13th. So it's going to be like a bubble residency, and we're actually taking the full band, so piano, drums, saxophone, upright bass, guitar, and then we're having a hard time getting our dancers together because of COVID and politics. So we have 3 dancers that are actually stranded in Brazil right now, which is a huge setback for us, like emotionally and just in terms of talent. But it's one of those situations where I think it's too late for us to do anything else. So we're just like, let's keep our chin up and let's just go into this and it's another one of those things where like, it's going to be good. It's going to be okay. Yeah. We're going to make the best of it, and it's not going to be a waste of time. So we don't quite know how it's going to turn out.
Before we go out for the night, I know you have another music track that you shared with us to play. So if you could tell the story of that track and some background, and then let's give that a listen and come in with a little more discussion before we close out.
Yeah, cool. So this track is called Bachimakumba. This is the way that we came about this track was it's a song that Leo liked. Well, it's several songs because there's this old version. Leo, correct me if I'm wrong. There's like an older version of Bachimakumba that is Tropicalia, which is like that genre he's talking about from the 60s, like super avant-garde, like really cool, really brainy, but also like kind of rock, kind of like Beatles psychedelic, but Brazil, and then a newer artist did a song that really had the same name, but like doesn't sound anything like it. That was Daniela Mercury, right? And then so Leo liked that song, and he sent that to me. So I just lifted kind of almost just like the form from it. If you played the 2 songs together, you wouldn't really think they were the same, but we used it as a template, and that was us trying to figure out our way of working together, because that was one of our earliest collaborations, just as musicians. There wasn't even any dance. It was just like us figuring out making this music. And so on this track, it's also an edited version, so it's not the full version. I think it comes in in the middle, so you'll just kind of hear the sax solo go through a couple choruses, and then the outro is where you'll hear the tap dance, and it's kind of Leo just keeping like a samba pattern, right? And clapping at the same time, and it's us chanting. It's Leo and I chanting in the studio, which we had envisioned it being like a big group of people being like Bachimakumba, hey, hey. But in the end, it's just like the 2 of us. So sometimes you take what you can get. But this is another track. It's on Spotify. It's on iTunes, and it just came out super groovy, and it has a little bit of that psychedelic, Tropicalia like vibe to it, to me a little bit. So it's pretty rocking.
Beautiful work. Beautiful work. Nice, 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 and so integrative of the tap and the music. I just have a final question for the two of you, and then Claire, after that, we'll turn your mic back on and see if we can get you sounding good for some closing questions and thoughts of yours. But Greg, you know, in terms of working with the tappers and the music, can you talk to us about, you know, how working with dance has influenced your composition? And, you know, maybe after that, Leo, you can talk about working with Greg and the musicians. Has that influenced your choreographic work?
Yeah, you know, I would like to say some like specific way that it has, but the truth is that really, in a sense, kind of like my professional coming of age has just been through tap dancers. So it's not necessarily something that's specific to them, but having the opportunity to be, a co-musical director of Dorrance Dance, which is like a really big company, like traveling a lot and on big stages and different professional settings, and then being lucky enough to be, kind of one of the captains of this company, and right down to the details of us, like forming like like incorporating the company so that we can do payroll and like all these things. It's like everything I know basically professionally has been through the lens of dance.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was just like a band is just like 4 people on stage, like not even worrying about what you're wearing, lighting, like when should we come,
right.
Like, there's just like whatever, you just get up there and do it. So
I would imagine it would seem. I was just saying from what you're saying, I would imagine for me to be like you would lose instruments if you were to just go back to a band and not have a company of dancers.
You know what? If I was to just go back to a band, what I would take from this experience is all of the theatrical elements that I've learned from dancers, which is like, like we should like we should start in a blackout, and then we should have some lights, and then there should be like a narrative arc visually to the show and some things so that people are coming to see an experience. You're not just relying on like, well, we sure can play this really well.
Yeah.
No, really, there's so much else that I was just like totally blind to, and I definitely credit that with working with dancers.
Beautiful.
And I guess for me as well, it's just the opposite side. It's what we've been talking about quite a little bit earlier. It's like learning how to sit on your pocket, or like just do your job for a second. Literally be an instrument independent of how you look or what it look like. One of the funniest things that I experienced doing with Greg is when he decided what is the percussive section of a song for the dancers, and I just have to figure out how to play that constantly with a bunch of dancers, but in a way that it's not boring. It's interesting for people to watch. It's interesting for people to listen, and it's fair to what we are aiming for. So yeah, I guess like sitting down in my pocket and trying not to be fancy and just position. Yeah, I think that's my take on it.
Yeah. Beautiful. Claire, let's see if your technology can come in here.
Okay.
We can hear you. You just muted. You just muted. So let Kevin can unmute you. Here, I think Kevin, if you can unmute Claire. Claire, he can do it from his side. He can't. Okay, there you go.
Okay, I think I'm good.
Okay.
Okay. One more. I just want to say one more thing for Greg. When you want that whole experience after working with tap dancers, David Byrne, the musician, has a show on Broadway that is worthy of that kind of experience. And Leo, I think you come with a lot of information from the performance perspective and all that time and space, and that's what makes dance unique, is that it's time and space, and it's all about time. So I can't be so philosophical, whatever the word, philosophical. I can't say it like Jimmy Slide would say it. He would just lay it out like that's what it's supposed to be, and so be it. But I'm very excited for all the young dancers and collaborators and everybody coming up. It's exciting time in spite of our time. So thank you, Steve, for inviting me. I apologize for my technological adversity.
Well, thanks, Claire.
St. Joseph.
Thanks so much, Claire. You are certainly. Claire, we're working on definitely bringing music.
Pardon?
We're bringing music from the soul here to Connecticut to dance. The show is called Partido. You can go to Music from the Soul website, check out their work, see it more. Claire, thank you. We're really lucky to have one of the best tappers and certainly one of the most esteemed tap dancers and teachers in Connecticut with us for this conversation tonight. Leo and Greg, it's wonderful to have you back with us again today. And next week, we will have you back Monday night at 7 o'clock. Next week's discussion is percussive dance. And it is percussive dance in all sorts of different forms. So we have a flamenco dancer. We have we're working on getting a step dancer. We have a Kathak Indian dancer. We have we expect an Irish step dancer, and we will be in conversation, showing some video of each and talking about how percussive dance works across many different cultures, and how that conversation will happen will be unique for next Monday. So I didn't expect to get this much airtime just due to the technical difficulties. I hopped on, but I appreciated the conversation with you so much tonight. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Claire.
Everybody.